Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. Today is April 15th, 2024. This is episode 274. Thank you for joining me here today in central Minnesota, where spring is arriving and the grass is greening up, and it's just amazing how quickly that happens when you actually get some rain, some soaking rain, and then some warm temps. So we'll see what happens with the drought this year. This would be year 3, I believe, but we'll see if we can kind of reverse that this spring. That would be awesome. I apologize for not recording a podcast last week. A lot of you messaging, you're like, there's no podcast. You are correct. There was no podcast. I just got really behind. There was a lot of stuff going on in life. We had my niece's funeral. We also were moving furniture down to our youngest, who moved a few hours away. Our chicks were hatching. I was starting seeds. I just got really behind. And I thought, you know what? I can hustle to catch up, and I can get you a podcast episode recorded for Monday. Last Monday was the 8th. Oh, yeah. And that was Eclipse Day and all that. It was my son's birthday. It was, all of that. Happy 20th birthday, son, youngest. And yeah, so I thought I can hustle to catch up, or I can just chill out for a minute and skip this week. And chilling out is what I needed to do after all that. So no podcast, no video last week, no email newsletter last week. Life happened, and that happened. So what else has been happening on the homestead? Well, we did have 19 chicks hatch from the homemade incubator, so that was exciting. They lived in my office for a few days, and that got really loud, as it does. So they are now moved out to our little barn. I don't know what I'm going to do with 19 chicks. My husband asked, what are you going to do with 19 chicks? I don't know. I don't need 19 chicks, but I have them, and that's what we do on the homestead. Which is similar to what we do with seeds, right? We started seeds, and I always end up starting way more than I say that I'm going to start, because that's what happens every single time. I'm in the garden at the end of the year, and I'm harvesting, and I'm realizing I didn't need all of this, right? I could scale back next year. Remind me next year I don't need to start as many seeds. And what do I do next year? I start so many seeds. This is what we do. And the other thing is that I check 10 seconds after I've planted these seeds in their little, seed starting pod things. I check about 10 seconds after I've planted them, because it's like I'm 5 years old and I think they're going to pop right up or something. And so my husband always thinks it's funny. He's like, are you checking on your seeds again? Amy, it's only been 10 minutes. Amy, it's only been 2 days, I'm getting the rabbit area ready, and I'm really excited about that. We're about a month or so away from being able to pick up our rabbits, so I'm super excited to be able to start that adventure and see how that goes for us. So stay tuned. I'm sure I'll be talking lots about that. Another thing that I have been working on is creating an apocalypse resource library. That is what I'm calling our bookshelf in our living room. Our bookshelf has always been in our living room. We've always had lots of books in there, fiction and nonfiction, but I've started to organize it more and pay attention to what we have and what I think we still need. I'm trying to make it more resourceful. And so I've named it the Apocalypse Resource Library. And I'm trying to find really great homesteading or prepping resources to put in there. I'd love to know your favorite paperback or hardcover. I'm talking paperback or hardcover. This is not ebook. This is not audiobook. I want actual print books. That's why I'm calling it the Apocalypse Resource Library, y'all. So if the internet goes down, or I just don't want to search on the Googles, I can just go sit on my couch and I can find the resources there. So drop me an email. Let me know, what is your favorite paperback or hardcover resource that you reach for, that's just full of all the information that you think everybody should have. It should be on everybody's bookshelf, because I would love to know, because I don't have all of them, and there's a lot of them out there. So I'd love to know what you really enjoy and what has been helpful for you. Maybe I'll do an episode on that, or maybe I'll even do a live stream on what books I've got and why they're my favorites and why I think they're useful, and we can have a big old discussion about the resources we should all have. That's what I've got to catch you up on. So yeah, let's head over to the main topic. I didn't even tell you what today's topic is, y'all. It's like I'm gone for a week And then I get all out of practice. Today's topic is 5 things we questioned while raising chickens on our homestead. And now that you know the topic, which you probably already knew because you read the title of this episode, all right, let's get to it. So today we're talking about 5 things that my husband and I questioned while we were raising chickens on our homestead. Now, this is things that people say about raising chickens that, we started to follow in the beginning because that's what you do when you get into something new. And then as we got into homesteading more, we started to think, wait a second, why are we doing it this way? Or why do they say that you have to do it this way? Or how did people do this a long time ago? And why are we not still doing it that way? So 5 things we questioned while raising chickens on the homestead. That's where this episode came from. And I want to start out with the caveat, you do not have to agree with me on these things, okay? Because in fact, my opinion on one of these topics gets me in trouble a lot with a certain part of the chicken community. And I wrote an article about one of these things, and every time that article makes the rounds, someone shares it, and it makes the rounds again. And then I get a lot of hate mail and a lot of hate comments. And I mean that in the most serious ways. Hate mail and hate comments because of things that I say about this specific topic. So you don't have to agree with me. I get that. I'm just telling you how we do it here on our farm in case you're like, oh, hey, like I didn't know you could do that. My purpose here is to point out that just because everyone is saying something in the homesteading community, it doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. And it doesn't mean that everyone has looked at the reasons people are doing it or not doing it a certain way. They're just doing it or not doing it because that's what they've been told online, on YouTube, from a blogger, whatever. They don't often think, okay, well, how did they do this 50 years ago, 75 years ago, 100 years ago? Have chickens changed? Have goats changed? Have cows changed? Like, has that all changed? Or have we just made things more complicated? Okay, so that's kind of what we're going with here. Just as, information here, we have had chickens since 2009, so we're not new at this by any means. And 2009 was 2 years before we moved to our actual farm. Okay, so we had chickens before we moved to our farm here. We have tried a lot, we have learned a lot, and the way that we do things here is not fancy at all. But let me tell you, we have hatched out a lot of chicks, and we've had a lot of chickens, and we've had more eggs than we know what to do with, and we've had many years of freezers full of chickens. So I call that a success because we did what we wanted to do. We reached our goals we were trying to reach. But as always, you should do what you want to do on your farm and do what works for you on your farm. So here we go. Okay, number 1, one of the things that we questioned while raising chickens on our homestead, chick starter. Okay? We do not use chick starter on our farm. We used to use chick starter, but we stopped several years ago for a lot of different reasons. But it all started when we were having a hard time locating chick starter locally. Okay? Sometimes we go into this thinking, oh, I need chick starter. I'm just going to go get chick starter. It was a year we just couldn't find chick starter. And so I'm at the feed store, our local feed store, and this old farm boy tells me, you don't even really have to use chick starter. And I remember thinking, what? Like, what do you know? Which is totally ironic because he's this guy my age who had grown up on a farm, like he'd lived on a farm his whole life. And he's telling me, you don't really have to use chick starter. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. And where did I learn about farming? Mostly from a bunch of bloggers in the early 2000s, right? But I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. But then I thought about, at the time we had free-range chickens, right? So I thought about our free-range chickens and how the moms would hatch out babies and the babies would follow the mama hen around and eat whatever the mama hen was eating. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Why do we need chick starter? How would we be keeping that separate? And it all just like kind of came to me like, wait a second. Why are we doing it this way? And this is the topic that people will always freak out at me about. This is the one that gets me in trouble. Like, I am purposely messing with chicks' nutrition, okay? And these people who get mad at me will cite percentages of this and percentages of that and what a chick needs and what a hen needs and what a rooster needs. And y'all, I don't know how you keep that all separated and straight for mealtime when you have a mixed flock, but okay. But The thing that really gets to me is some of these people that are freaking out about chicks' nutrition and how I'm basically killing my chicks because I'm letting them eat layer feed with their mom. Some of these people that are freaking out about that are not nearly that specific about their own human nutrition. You know, they're more concerned about their chicks' nutrition than they are about their human nutrition. And so I think we all just need to calm down a little bit about that. I do not have chicks that are falling over dead from eating layer feed. I feed them what I can get my hands on, and it has worked for us. And depending on where you live, I had published this article pre-COVID, right? That article got really popular during the pandemic, you know, when there was all the shortages, because people are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't find chick starter. I can't find this stuff. And they were like, thank you for your article because it made my anxiety less. We get so scientifically bound up about this is exactly the way you have to do it. And then we create huge amounts of anxiety for people that just want to raise chickens, that just want to have some baby chicks. And they think their chicks are going to die because they can't find this certain bag of chick starter. Okay? That's my 2 cents about chick starter. Number 2, the next 2 things have to do with incubating chicks. Okay? So number 2, turning eggs in an incubator. People get really specific about how often you have to turn eggs in your incubator and how you turn your eggs in your incubator. Okay, you do not have to turn each egg individually. You do not have to do that, okay? Now, with the incubators we're using, they're built out of coolers. The bottoms of the incubators we use are just flat, okay? There's no dividers. We don't use automatic egg turners, so our incubators are just flat on the bottom. And so I remember my husband came out to the barn one day, and I was dealing with the pheasants when we were incubating pheasant eggs, and we had coolers and coolers full of these pheasant eggs. You know, you'd have like 60 pheasant eggs in one incubator because they're so small. And I'm in there trying to turn every single one individually because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And my husband said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm turning the eggs. And he's like, but why are you turning them like that? I'm like, how am I supposed to turn them? And he took his palm and he rolled it over the whole bunch of eggs so they turned over, and then we were good to go. And it never occurred to me that you could just bloop. You could just turn all the eggs like that. You don't have to be super specific that they turn exactly 180 degrees, right? Take your palm, roll it over the whole bunch of eggs so they turn over, and you're good to go. It takes less than 10 seconds. The other thing is you do not have to turn your eggs every single hour. I have seen articles online that say the best thing you can do is turn your eggs every single hour. That's how you're going to get the best hatch. Y'all, my eggs have always gotten turned 3 times a day. When I get up, when I go to bed, and somewhere in the middle when I remember. And sometimes I forget that middle turn. But I'm still getting a hatch rate of 80 to 100%. Now with ducks, it is a little trickier. They do need to be turned more often, but you know, you can make that happen. But when you have websites out there saying the best thing you can do is turn your eggs every hour, that's when we have people freaking out, thinking their hatch is going to be a fail if they don't turn their eggs every single hour individually. You all stop. Stop. The third thing that we questioned was the temperature and the humidity preciseness in the incubator. Now, I did mention in the beginning of this episode that we just hatched out 19 chicks. The last batch of chicks that we hatched out, I knew was going to be a slower hatch, okay? It's supposed to be 21 days. I think this was actually 23 that it took, but I knew that was going to happen because the temperature was a little bit wonky, and the humidity seemed to be a little bit all over the place with this particular hatch. And now I'm wondering if there's a leak in the cooler, or maybe that particular cooler is just too old to be effective, so we may need to retire that one. But the point is, these chicks still hatched, you guys, okay? Even though the humidity was a little bit wonky and the temp was not as high as it was a couple degrees cold, they still hatched. I guarantee you that in the chicken world, there are chickens out there that are not keeping their nests at exactly 99.5 degrees and whatever percent humidity, okay? We've got people out there freaking out that the humidity dropped 2% or went up 2% or the temp was 4 degrees cooler or that they can't open the incubator after a certain time because, oh my goodness, if you open the incubator after lockdown, you've basically destroyed your entire hatch. Way to give people anxiety about something that should be really awesome, right? This should be a cool, awesome thing. And we've got people with massive amounts of anxiety doing this because all these articles are like super specific. You have to do this and it has to be exactly this. No, it doesn't. I mean, it has to be close, but let's stop freaking out that the humidity dropped 2%. Okay? Let's stop with that. Sometimes hatches fail and it's nothing you did. And sometimes hatches fail and you're never going to know why. And I think how this all comes about is people try to suppose what happened, okay? And they make it very scientific and very calculated, and then someone decides, yep, that's probably what happened, and then people get hung up on making that not ever happen again. And then we have all these websites making things very, very complicated. I once had a mama hen who left a few eggs in a nesting box, and she had hopped out with her floofy babies that had hatched and were all dried off. Now, this is a nesting box that's about 4 feet off the ground because in one of our chicken coops, it's the original wall of nesting boxes that has been at the farm forever. It was since, the original owners lived here. And so it's kind of a wall of nesting boxes. And so she was in one that was about 4 feet off the ground. And she had taken all her babies that had hatched and she had jumped down to the ground and got them all to the ground, however that happens. And then she was sitting with them on the ground. And one of the eggs that she had left in the nesting box still hatched. She wasn't sitting on it. And I remember it was one of those really hot and humid summers here, but she wasn't sitting on it and it hatched and then it screamed for its mama. And I had to pop that baby underneath its mama on the floor of the coop with her other chicks. But it was the craziest thing. Y'all, if a chick can hatch when mama's not even there, I think we need to calm down just a little, okay? All right, number 4. Something else that we questioned while raising chickens on the farm is kill cones versus hatchets. If you're a vegetarian, you may want to skip ahead. If you have youngsters listening who may be sensitive, you may want to skip ahead. But here we go. So if you don't know what kill cones are, they are just this kind of cone-looking thing where when you're going to butcher your chicken, you turn the chicken upside down, you put it into this cone, you pull its head through the bottom of the cone, and then you would slit the throat, okay? And they bleed out, and that's what a kill cone is, okay? It has been sold as a kinder way to butcher. They say that kill cones have the added benefit of kind of giving the birds this sense of disorientation. Maybe it relaxes them. Sometimes when you hold a bird upside down, they actually will just kind of chill out. So that's kind of how they've been marketed. They've also been marketed as, your bird isn't flopping around all over. When you butcher it, it just kind of is there. All the blood can drain into a bucket, all of that, right? I tried to look up when kill cones were invented, who invented them, what that all was. I could not find anything online about that. I just found out what they are and why they're used, but not when they were invented. So I don't know when kill cones started to be a thing that were commonly used. When we're going to talk about slaughtering an animal, humane slaughter is instant, okay? You don't want the animal to suffer. You want it to be an instant thing, okay? So yes, we want slaughter to be humane. We don't want to be a jerk about slaughtering and butchering, but we need to be real here that when you decide to raise animals for meat, you are ending an animal's life. And sometimes I think that a lot of these methods, all of that chatter is because we want us humans to feel better about it. And I don't know if it makes a difference to the animal. Now keep listening. Don't get mad. Whether a chicken's head is pulled through a cone and their jugular is cut, or they're put over a block and their head is removed with a hatchet, I honestly don't know if that makes a difference to the bird, you guys. Now, if you don't know what you're doing when you butcher and you fumble with it and it becomes a thing where you're just causing pain and you're not actually killing the animal because you're not quick about it, that's a different story. We dispatch our pigs with a 20-gauge slug. That's what works best on our farm to use. If I were to have to shoot that pig multiple times before it died, that would be horrible. That would not be humane at all. So when you decide to butcher an animal, know what you're doing. Don't cause the animal unnecessary pain. But to pretend that we can wrap slaughtering up with a nice little white bow and somehow make it kind, y'all, that's some effective marketing right there. That's some effective marketing that we have fallen for. So the reason we actually questioned this was when we did ducks last time. If you followed for a while, you know that we had a lot of ducks to do, okay? And it was just my husband and I doing it. The boys were gone. And it was suggested that we just use a hatchet because we had so many to do, and using the kill cone, which is what we've been using for a long time. We've been using kill cones since we moved to the homestead in 2011. We were like, oh, kill cones, that's the thing we're going to do. And that's what we used. So when we decided to do the ducks this time, it was, all right, so to use the kill cones to do the ducks, we're going to have to try and stuff those ducks. That, let me remind you, Muscovies have claws, okay, and they're big and strong. We're going to have to stuff these ducks into a kill cone, okay, which some of them probably are not going to fit into the kill cones we have. And then we're going to wait for them to bleed out before doing 2 more and 2 more and 2 more, because we have 2 kill cones. So are we supposed to do that, or should we just use a hatchet? And we decided we're just going to use a hatchet. And let me tell you, using a hatchet on almost 40 Muscovy ducks was really fast. Really fast. Way faster than if we would have went through doing the kill cone for all 40 ducks. And the fact that I say that it was fast means we were effective in what we were doing, okay? That's what we want to do here. We want to be effective in what we're doing because we don't want the animal to suffer. So we want to be fast. We want to be effective. We want to know what we're doing. It was just my hubby and I, and we got it done, and it was fast. So when we butcher again, it's very possible that we're just going to switch to a hatchet, like old school over a block with a hatchet. Another reason that the kill cones are kind of, said, this is why you should use it. Some folks have said that if you just chop their head off, the meat is going to taste bad if you're letting the birds flop all over after you have beheaded them. They say that there's adrenaline in the meat from the stress, and that makes the meat taste bad. I mean, we've all heard about running around like a chicken with his head cut off. That is a thing. I remember the first time I saw that when I was little. My dad was helping butcher, and I saw a chicken run around with its head cut off, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually a thing. But here's the thing. I don't know if you know this, but the chicken isn't really consciously running. The chicken doesn't know it's running. That is all just nerves doing their thing. There's a saying that pain isn't pain until it reaches the brain. That signal has to get to the brain, and then the brain has to process it and go, ouch. Pain isn't pain until it reaches the brain. And a chicken with its head cut off has no brain, you guys. Even though it's running around, even though its nerves are still doing the thing, it feels no pain. I'm pretty sure the pioneers were not using kill cones, and neither were my farmer relatives, because when I told them that I was going to use a kill cone for my birds after we had moved to the farm, they asked what a kill cone was. So obviously they were not using kill cones at their farm. I can also tell you that a chicken dinner served on the prairie or at great-great-grandma's farm was probably delicious. And anyone who is telling me that great-great-grandma was serving up a subpar bird because she lopped its head off to butcher it instead of using a kill cone is either living in a unicorn land or they're trying to sell me something. That is my 2 cents about kill cones versus hatchets. All right, number 5. The 5th thing that we questioned while raising chickens on our homestead. Is this cost effective? Now, this is a loaded question because it's going to depend a lot on a lot of different stuff, okay? What you're buying, what's available where you live, how you're raising your birds, are you free-ranging, are you feeding? Like, there's so much stuff that goes into this. But people will say, move to a farm and get some chickens because you're going to save a lot of money on eggs, or you're going to save a lot of money on your fried chicken dinner, or it's going to be cost effective because you're going to make money selling your chicken eggs. Y'all, when everyone gets chickens on their little piece of property so they can have eggs, it's really hard to sell your eggs, right? When everybody's doing the thing, it's hard to make money doing the thing. As far as we are concerned, there have been years that we were really thankful to have eggs here because you couldn't get them in the store. And if we wanted to sell our eggs, we probably could have made a killing because there just were not eggs anywhere, or the eggs were so expensive at the store, people were not buying them. And there have been years where it's like, why do we have these birds? And that's the honest thing. And people will talk about all the money you're going to save when you move to a homestead because you're going to have all this stuff. And sometimes what we have found is it's more the convenience of having this stuff here and knowing, here's where the eggs came from. The eggs taste really good. That's really awesome. But it's not necessarily saving you money. And I know there are people who have now started to talk about that, and that makes me really happy. But I feel like when we got into homesteading, the whole marketing was move to the country, get yourself all these animals. It's going to save you so much money. And that's not exactly true. So it's okay when you get into homesteading, or if you've been homesteading for a while and you're running your numbers, and some people get into it and never run their numbers because they're just like, this is just what we want to do. This is a life we want to live. Doesn't matter to me if it's saving us money because it's worth our peace, and that, is worth all the money in the world. But it's okay to dig into your numbers and be like, maybe we don't need this many animals, or maybe we need to change the way we're doing this, or maybe we need to look at different food, or maybe, it's okay to do that. And it's okay to come out and say, you know what, this ain't cost effective, or this is not saving us money, okay? It's okay to say that because it's true. So that's my 5 things. And whether you agree with me or not on those points, the point of all of this in this episode is when you get into homesteading, you're probably going to go with what the popular research is pushing forth, or what the current thing to do is. And that's fine because you have to start somewhere, especially if you're jumping into it blind, having no idea what to do. You have to start somewhere. But sometimes we just keep doing things and we never question why things are done the way they are done. And if we're maybe making it too complicated, or if there's another way that works just as well, or used to work just as well, that no one talks about anymore and no one questions. And it's tough because when you go online and you search for answers, there are certain things that are going to come up, and there are certain other things people aren't going to talk about. And I guess for me, there are some triggers where I know, wait a second. And it's one of those things is if it's something that's very sciencey, very precise measurement, you have to do it this way. Those kind of things it's a red flag for me because honestly, I just don't think animals are that precise. Okay. Like Ma Nature does what she does, and that's what she does. And animals are part of that whole creation. And I don't think they're that precise. It would be funny to, have people talk about humans so scientifically and precise, because y'all know we're not that way. We're not all quantifiable like that. I don't know if that's the right word, but hopefully you know what I mean. Another thing that's kind of a red flag for me is when things get really feel-goody, I think a lot of those situations are just so humans can feel more civilized in our homesteading, or maybe feel really good about the one bad day our animals are having, or we're trying to make our animals like humans and assume a lot of things about what they need. And I'm not saying be a jerk to your animals. I'm not saying that at all. We treat our animals very well here, but they're not people. It's not the same. The third thing that I sometimes will question when someone's saying, this is the way to do it on a homestead, sometimes I will question it because I wonder, is there something being sold here? Has a problem been created by someone who is now going to sell the solution for it? So those are the things that I kind of will keep in the back of my mind when I'm hearing things about, here's how you should do this on your homestead. And it might be good for you to keep those questions in the back of your mind too. All right, that's what I have to say today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you're having a lovely time, whatever you're doing on the homestead this week, and I'll talk to you again soon. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com, find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media, or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay farmish.